Hello and welcome to the third video in this case study here, looking at 10 miles away. And this time I'm going to talk to you a bit about punchy drums. If there is one thing I get from a client, it's always, can you make the drums more punchy? So we're going to look at how I've maybe arrived at that when mixing these drums here. First of all, let's just completely take everything off, all the plugins off. I'll leave the phase, this EQ here, because that's the phase, and then same here, this is actually taking out a little bit on the floor toms. Actually maybe let's take that out as well. Let's take it all out there. I'll just show you how I have arrived at this decision. So first of all, I should probably say we've got a kick in and a kick out. Completely honest, I'm not sure they're labelled correctly. I think it might have been that we had them in the wrong around on the channels, and because the kick in actually has a lot more bass in it than the kick out, so I'm kind of using the kick in as like the main bass drum sound, and this kick out is just adding in a little bit of top end. We've got here the snare. Now I've used a one band EQ here just to flip the phase, so I'll leave that on, otherwise you're just going to hear an out of phase snare. You know what that sounds like. And I've got the overheads here into a bus, and then I've treated them together. We've got a rack and a floor tom, which come quite prominently into this song, because we've got a section which is sort of riding on the floor tom, and it's got a rack tom in there as well, so quite important in this song. Then we've got some room mics as well, which I've put into a bus, and then we've got the hi-hat mic at the ends there. So that's what we've got going on channel wise. When you're mixing drums, as you may know, you have to kind of make a decision whether you want it to be kind of mostly overhead and then sort of supplement that with your individual drum and cymbal mics, or the other way around, and sort of have the individual mics and the individual channels and then bring in a little bit of overheads. You can probably see by the positions of the faders at the moment that I've done it the latter. I've gone for the individual mics and then the overheads. The reason I came to that decision is because I just felt that the overheads weren't exactly the best recorded that I've ever done. So I've gone for the other way around. They're not that amazingly spread in the stereo field. I've got them 100% left and right, and yet you can still kind of hear there's a lot of hi-hat in both left and right. So I've gone for the individual mics. Also, if you're trying to make something punchy, then probably having that immediate sound of the individual mics is probably going to be more of a punchy sound than your overheads would be. So let's have a listen to the drums, and we'll just see what they're like off the bat. Here we go, and then I'll explain how I've got to these plugins. Tell you what, let's go from the first verse where the drums really do a beat. Hey, CPU, just as we get to the tom bit. Anyway, I think that's probably enough there. So let's just go ahead and solo these drums for now. Solo, 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 doo-ba-doo-doo. And the hi-hat's there, isn't it? And that's more, yeah. Great, and we'll just have a little listen as we go through. So we've got... So yeah, so already we are on a more of a punchy sound by having the levels set to the individual mics. But another thing that's probably not immediately obvious is I have kind of aligned the individual mics so that they are somewhat more in phase with the overheads. And that should help, rather than any kind of what's the word, sort of counteraction between the two. I have actually gone for putting it more in phase with one another. It's just going to mean that they unify together. So here we go, we've got our compression here. You will notice I'm using pretty much 2 plugins, with the exception of the one band EQ, so 3 plugins. But yeah, this is what we have, is the Novatron. I absolutely love this compressor. And let's go and unbypass it. I'm just going to... So yeah, instant more punch. Of course, we've got quite a an attack quite all the way far. We've got quite a bit of compression, and our release is sort of on the quicker release sort of side. So we've got quite a bit of attack and quite a short release. So that should probably help with that punchiness soon. We're sort of really exaggerating the initial beta hitting the skin sort of sound from this EQ. I've put as flat, no saturation going on up here, and we've set the this compressor here has mix, punish and limit, so we've gone for punish, which is somewhat of the medium sort of setting. You would think limit would be the intermediate setting, but it's not. It's actually the punish there, and that's what we've gone for there. So quite an attack, and we've gone for quite a short release there. So yeah, we've also gone here quite heavy on the sub frequencies here in this bass drum, and the reason for that is because this is a 5-string bass guitar in this song, and I wanted the bass drum to sit lower than the bass guitar because it suits the genre a little more. But sort of whenever we go to that lower 5th string, it's going to add some sub stuff in, so this is to sort of complement that really. Generally speaking, when I'm EQing a drum, even though I'm using a preset here, I'm looking for the frequencies that are going to accentuate the tone of the drum, which, you know, is the fundamental of the note, the fundamental of the tone of the drum, which is going to be quite low on a bass drum. We've got it at 61 here, and then extra bit of sub pull in there. And then we're also looking for the frequency where the beta is hitting the batter head, and that is where I've got this kind of 3-2 here and this 12 up here for a little bit more, I suppose, air really. And yeah, and I cycled through the presets until I found one that did that I wanted. Tried it myself organically, but this seems to just work better, so I went with it and admitted to using a preset. Okay, so we've got that there. Let's got the kick out there as well, and I'll use largely the same compression settings I went with, just so we don't get any kind of weird sort of I don't know how to describe it, bounce effect, I suppose. You know, where one is pumping at one speed and one's pumping at another. I kind of wanted both bass drum mics just to pump in and out at the same point. But our EQ here, I've gone for a cut before, so let's just try completely soloing that brighter bass drum sound. So we've just taken out some of the fluff, the muffling in those two frequencies there. We've got something right at the lower end of low mids, and we've also got some other things at around about 1K. If I take these off for now and just bypass these frequencies and bring them in one at a time, you'll hopefully hear what they're doing. So yeah, I'm relying quite a lot on the attack there and the sub in the other microphone there. Put them together and they kind of, well, I'll add in some boost I've got going on here, tiny bit of boost over at the subs. But mainly up here we're adding in some more of that attack. So we've taken away the 1K where there was a lot of attack but it wasn't quite pleasing to the ear. And we're adding in this 5K up here, this. So we've made that the attack part of the bass drum, and then we're going to add in this other mic now to get the actual tone of the drum. Okay, so that is the bass drum. So let's try adding in the snare drum mic to this. So the top mic I've gone for, and again it's this idea of having the attack from the beater, but also the tone of the drum come through, the two elements of the drum I'm kind of looking for when I'm mixing. So we've got here an EQ where I've taken out some of the muffle and I've made it a dynamic here on the Pro Q4. And that is around about sort of 443 hertz there, so sort of 4.5 hertz, you know what I mean. And that's just taking out some of the lower mids in that drum, and then we're boosting here with this kind of low cut. We've actually extended up the lower end where it cuts off just to make it sound a bit more natural, but that's at 154, which is sort of roughly where I found the tone of the snare drum here. Interesting, because usually for me it's more in the kind of 220 hertz sort of area, but a little bit lower on this snare, so it must have been tuned a little bit lower. So let's try adding this in. I'll explain the compression first though. Compression we've got here is, if I can bypass it a second, sort of a similar setting to the bass drum, but we've kind of gone a little bit more extreme on the release. And we've added this airy tone shift on the compressor, which is going to add a little bit more whack, a little bit more tone and top end to our sound. We've got a tiny bit of saturation, which goes a long way. And we've got it in the mix settings, so the lowest sort of compression amount, because we're going to end up compressing these drums a little more and more as we go along the chain. So let's try it, and then we've got some more top end going on here, so 3.5K and almost 10K on there. So let's take off everything and we're just going to add in the tops one at a time. And you'll probably notice as I do this, the tone of the drum will come out quite a lot more, as I'm relying on the top mic of the snare to be the tone of the drum, and the bottom mic's going to be kind of more of the rattle and the top end. So let's add that in there. So there we go. We've got this sort of very larger than life bass drum going on, and our snare drum has both the rattle of the snares, we've got the attack, and we've got the tone of the actual drum as well within those compression and EQ settings. Just quickly show you what I boosted on the bottom snare, so you can see I've got here like a 2K sort of push and a shelf around about 9K there, and we're taking out sort of just shy of 400 hertz. Low mids, it's always gonna make it sound less punchy having the low mids in. It's also just going to muffle everything up, so that's what we've got there. The overheads, so the overheads here I've kind of opted, as they are kind of adding and gelling the rest of the microphones together rather than being the main source of the sound. I've opted for this this EQ setting here, which again was a preset, but I cycled through all the presets till I found something I liked, and I thought, yes, that's what I wanted it to do. I didn't just slap a preset on. So as you can see, we've taken out quite a lot of low, a lot of mids, and we've put in a lot of highs. So really the overheads in this mix are actually kind of more like cymbal mics really, than anything. And we're relying kind of a lot on the immediate mics for the punch and the tone of the drums. So let's play that with and without. Yeah, so on their own, they're almost like that kind of sort of radio mic kind of effect almost on their own. Really are just there to accentuate the cymbals and not so much of the drums. As we just come to the end of that snippet there, you'll notice the floor tom has quite a sustain to it. I found the sustain at around 137, and we have that there. So let's get to that bit in the song. It's the pre-chorus. So yeah, so once you've done a massive cut like this, you're probably not actually going to notice that floor tom just quite as much. But I did it on the actual floor tom mic as well over here. So I thought they better match a bit there. But so yeah, so the overheads in this mix really are there to keep out the way of the drums, but make sure the cymbals are in there. Okay, let's move on to the toms. Let's add these in. So here's without the tom mics. So yeah, there they are, and as you can hear, as I brought in those tom mics, they sound quite mid-focused at the moment. And we don't necessarily want our toms to sound so mid-focused on this. We kind of want them to add that larger than life depth like we've got with the bass drum. So let's throw in this EQ here in this frequency where we're taking out some of the sustain on the floor tom. So there you go. We've taken out some of that sustain in the tone of the drum to bring out more of the attacks. There's a bit more of a balance there. I felt it was a bit too tone heavy before. Let's add in the other EQs we've got going on here then. We've got a cuts, one here, and a boost. You'll notice I sort of cut before a compressor and then and then use additive EQ after a compressor. And the reason is because I don't want to boost something and then the compressor just squashes it back down. So I'm cutting before and I'm boosting afterwards, and I don't want to cut after the compressor because it might make the compressor work harder to then only cut it out. So I'm cutting before. What am I cutting? Low mids, surprise surprise, 350 Hertz and 220 Hertz as well, so quite a lot of low mids, but then we're accentuating 45 Hertz, so some real sub stuff in this. There we go. And there's a similar school of thought on the rack tom as well, just all of the numbers are not quite, so we've got kind of 350 Hertz, but we're not accentuating loads of sub because it's a rack tom, it's not really there, or if it is, it's not that pleasant. And we're taking out some 1K on that one, probably too much beta. And then we're adding in sort of 100 Hertz and some 3.5K and some 11K as well, bringing out the tone of the drum and the attack again. Okay. What have we got left? The rooms. Okay, let's hear the rooms on their own. Rooms sound fantastic on this recording. I use my ribbon mics on this one. I used a pair of ribbon mics and a space pair. I should probably have mentioned some of the other mics we've got going on. The overheads were a pair of NT5s I borrowed off Kirk, who helped me engineer this drum recording. We've got some Beta 57s on the snares, and the kick in is Mason's mysterious mic. So I borrowed a microphone off Mason Lalong of the band Batch, and that's right by the batter head. And then we've got a AKG D112 poking it just inside the resonant hole on the drum there. Like I say, I think they're labelled the wrong way round, and I think that actually the kick in is the kick out, and therefore the AKG, and this mysterious mic of Mason's is the kick in. But it's the ribbon mics here we're using on the room. So let's have a listen to these without anything on. There we go, and I completely crushed this with the compressor. A little bit of saturation and all of that, and let's have a listen to how that might sound. There we go, and much like the overheads, similar approach in that we're taking out some of the depth in the low mids and the bass and things, and sort of revealing the cymbals a little bit more. It means you kind of get this kind of V shape with the sound of your drums. The lower end is in the mono in the middle, and the outer side is sort of wide. The outer wider sides are the higher end frequencies. So I used a preset here called Room 1 on the Pro Q4. Let's have a listen to that. It's sort of doing some mid-side stuff. Opted for this preset, just like I say, for those purposes. I cycled through until I found one I liked. Could have done all this myself, but you know, someone's already done this, and I thought it sounded good, so let's go with it. So you get that kind of V shape in the EQ there. Okay, hi-hat. Hi-hat had a lot of snare in it, had a lot of bass drum in it. So a lot of what I did was actually taking out some of those elements, and we ended up with this. So big extreme EQ curve there, sort of taking out quite a lot of anything below sort of 1K, accentuating anything above that, and taking out a couple of frequencies that I thought sounded a bit naff as well. Okay, and that is what we ended up with the drum sound here. I'm going to just solo everything, and you could just hear the drums with everything on. Here we go. There you go, and that is how I made these drums sound a little bit more punchy, with pretty much two and a bit plugins. Is how I made these drums sound a little bit more punchy, a bit more life in them, a little bit more immediate sounding, and a little bit less muffled. Okay, feel free to leave any comments with any questions you might have. Thank you ever so much for listening, and next I believe the video will be on bass guitar, so look out for that. Alright then, thanks very much, over and out, bye.